Hello. I don't know what time of the day you're going to watch this video at, but we'll just call it hello. Um, what I'm going to do in this recording is I'm going to go through the key terms in the chapter 1 of the Introduction to Networking book and just go through and give an overview of these terms there that they're going to go through talking about in the chapter, but I'm going to give you my approach on the terms. Be aware on those. In the Collaborate session this week, the first Collaborate session, I didn't have time to cover chapter 1 in that session. We had chapter 2 to also cover, and it was the first session, so we spent a lot of time on general stuff. And then I did a hands-on demonstration of Packet Tracer. So I would encourage you to still watch that in terms of that. And given almost an hour and a half in both sessions that are recorded of it. So in both sessions, I promised students I would do a recording just for chapter 1. Normally, this would be in the regular weekly Collaborate session of what I'm going to go through on. Unfortunately, it's not live, so I'm not going to have any feedback as I'm doing it, which is one of the things I like about the live Collaborate sessions, is that I have students asking and commenting on things that I say. So we'll just walk on through it. And I'm just going to go by the list of terms here instead of trying to follow along through the chapter on it, although they are in the order that they're covered in the chapter. So let's just talk about them as we go through here. First one is, we're talking about networking, so let's talk about what a network is, the very first thing. With a network, all it is a group of connected objects. Now, network can be a term that's not just used in terms of computers, kinds of other stuff, including humans. As a matter of fact, I posted an announcement and made a comment about networking in there. With human networking, you'll see it quite often in terms of having groups of people getting together that may exchange business cards or just talk together and exchange comments about the industry they're in, getting together with others that work in similar type jobs or that are at a conference and that they all have some similar interest. And it could be also just community interest, not necessarily job interest, etc., that you could have all types of networking occurring of people and where people are sharing information back and forth with each other. Same thing. We're connecting all of our computers together and other type end devices. And end devices could be your computers, it could be a camera, it could be a scanner, it could be your phone. All types of things beyond that. Anything that would connect to the network. So you're connecting them all together and then they're able to share information all over on it. Now, from there, we can talk about some of the items that are within it. So I just mentioned end device to you and told you what they are. They're the actual ones that we normally, a lot of times you'll see on the definition that it's something that we as humans are going to more normally interact with, but it might not be. For instance, a sprinkler head could an end device because it would be on the end, an endpoint on the network, and that it's not, it could hold some information, but most likely it doesn't, but it's receiving direction of when to come on and when to go off. Likewise with the various computers, the same type thing. But you're going to a lot of times think in terms of end device, in terms mainly your PCs, laptops, phones, cameras, that type of stuff. Things that we definitely all interact with. All right here that I'm doing this on is an end device. Actually, my phone's sitting right here. Device on the network also. because we actually use internet phone. We're using the phone service across the internet. And it could be my phone, because that is actually an end device right here. I am connected to the network with my phone, etc. So that's what end devices are. Intermediary devices are going to be the devices that are connecting between all of these others, and that's going to be primarily connect our network together. Now, there's some others that will fall into there also, but going to be the primary ones. And there, when you get into chapter 2, which you've been in this week, this was actually last week when you were supposed to read chapter 1, you're actually working with an intermediary device that you're working with a switch, and you're seeing how to configure that switch. The topology is a drawing of, well, it's not necessarily a drawing, it is the layout of something. In our case, we're going to deal with networks, and that is, how is our network laid out there? Now, you're going to find out later on, we're going to talk about local topologies and physical topologies, or logical topologies and physical topologies. Sorry about that. I had the L right, but got the wrong alphabet. In Packet Tracer, you're going to see logical topologies and physical topology. You're going to see there's a physical button now, logical button. You're going to work mainly in there in the physical. The physical one is how is stuff actually set up. And in Packet Tracer, it shows you where you've actually got wire. It associates it out, all of the devices sitting in various rooms, in various buildings, in another city, that if you go into that physical view, and that you can see all of that relation. And the logical view is just showing how, so the physical one is actually showing directly, specifically how things are connected. The logical one's going to show how the stuff is effectively working. In terms of real networks, when you're looking at the logical view, it's how things really work. It might not be in terms of how they're physically connected, because we're going to discover later on that you can have networks that how they're passing some information through, it looks like it's a bus network when it's really a star network physically. So we'll be working with some different topologies. So you've got a logical topology also, which you're actually seeing in the logical view and Packet Tracer, and that's where you're going to normally work. Small office and home office networks, which they call SOHO, that's the standard term out for that. Small office, home office, so SOHO. And that's for networks that are real small ones, because at your home, you've actually got a network there if you're connected to the internet. It may be only one computer there, although in most cases today, most people have several devices connected to one desktop computer or laptop computer connected to it, or may have several. Your phone is probably connected to another device on it. You may have some more devices on it depending on the type of home you have, and etc. Technical loving, you may well have lots of devices connected to your home network. Refrigerator, your oven, and everything else may be connected to your network. Quite often though, your TV set may be connected to the network. In small offices where there's just a few people working in them, you'll have the same setup. So it looks essentially the same of what's going on there in the small office versus home network. But they have much more stuff. And I fully anticipate a lot more stuff going on to them. And I just mentioned about sprinkler heads a couple of minutes ago. You're seeing that as part of IoT, Internet of Things, I for Internet, O for of, and T for things, that so that the sprinkler you got out in your yard, instead of it always coming on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, if you've got it set up with a built-in irrigation system or whatever, that it only comes on if it hasn't rained in the last 24 hours, or if it's currently raining, it definitely doesn't come on. Or if the temperatures drop below 32 degrees, don't come on, because we don't want to create this ice sheet out there. Any of you that have lived further up north in the past can probably, what I saw a number of times growing up, where somebody's sprinklers came on during the night in the winter, and when you drove by their house the next morning, it wasn't just ice across their yard. They had a sheet of ice that went out into the road that got dangerous, and across the sidewalk. And for those of us walking to school or school, it got dangerous for me along there, trying to get past it. They talk about low area networks and wide area networks in here, and that's LANs and WANs. We're going to find out there's other types of networks also. Now, these are not any specific terms to them. It's a guesstimate of what you call a LAN versus what you call a WAN. So you'll have to just play with that one. But usually it's pretty clear which one it is. Basically to one geographical area. On a wide area network, by definition, is that it goes across multiple geographical areas, although what you call a geographical area may vary. The people in IT here at the college and other colleges across the state like ours would define the college is a LAN, L, a local area network. I would tell you it could be considered a WAN, a wide area network, because we've got the network covering not just on each campus. They're 60 miles or more apart. So there is it's for a large geographical area, but it's representing one college in a geographical area in Northwest Georgia. So could be some question on it. If I was doing a definition on the terms right there, looking at the school's network, I would go with it. So WAN, as far as the whole one, but the network within Walker County campus, which is where I'm sitting, would be a LAN. But others would go differently on that. So local one is smaller and more compact. Wide area covers a much larger area. If we had a campus sitting in Los Angeles and was part of our network, then everybody would agree it's a WAN at that point, and that those on each of the campuses is a LAN. And even if you see the whole thing as a LAN, you'd still see that it's LANs on each campus. The following terms, internet, intranet, and extranet, I'm going to throw you one more in there besides that. Intranet is your network within an organization. Has an intranet. We've got a network here called GNet2. On GNet2, they've got things that are basically just available from within the campuses. Actually, the faculty can get to them from home, and then it connects to the stuff in here. But it's stuff that's designed for college. Actually, beyond that, that you've also got other organizations. A business may well have an intranet, that's INTRA, that would be just things for their employees or things for just inside their business. If it's for outside, so it's stuff that's been developed to be used by outsiders, it's an extranet, EXTRA, and that's going outside. If it's for just use inside your organization or inside your network, and it's really inside your organization, so a little bit broader term for it, it's an intranet. If it's outside the organization, stuff that's for that, and your web pages, you may have a web page for use in your organization that just gives links to all the things people can get to in here, and that you definitely are going to have a web page that's for people on the outside world. Well, that web page design, people may still access from within the organization, but designed not for them, that it's got a specific design in terms of things for the outside world, would be the extranet. So our school web page is extranet. It's things for people. Some of it is used within the college, but it's designed for people to get things and know things about the college and working from outside. Now, internet with a little I there. Also, there is a term that is internet, same spelling. The only difference is the first letter of the word starts with the uppercase I. I like to keep them separate. As time has progressed, it's really grown into that a lot of people use the lower I one all the time and don't distinguish between the two different. Because an internet with a little I actually is anytime you have multiple networks connected to. Now, think back to the Georgia Northwestern network. It's actually an internet, besides being a LAN or a WAN, depending on whose definition is, because we have a network on each campus. So that makes a little I internet. We're connected with other technical colleges and agencies across Georgia before we get out into the real big wide world, wild wide world. And that means the state of Georgia has an internet also, little I. Now, when we talk about the internet, quite often, we're talking about that place where you can go out into the big wide open world, big wide wild open world, and do anything you about that you could possibly ever want to find, and lots of stuff that you never want to find, because there's just possibly ever exist, or at least it seems that way. That actually is where you're talking about that, where it's all of that information that's sitting out there for everybody all over the world is actually a big I internet, because it's a specific internet. It's an internet of all of these different networks throughout the world that combine together to make this network that's all connected. So it's still got the same basic definition. It's a bunch of networks connected together, but they're connected together for a specific purpose. So when you're talking about going out and looking at my webpage, and that's the demonstration I'm going to use a lot of times in the class, that you want to go look at my webpage, www.dwightwhite.com, that you go out on the big I internet to find my webpage, which is actually sitting, as far as I know, where the page actually sits is in Western Canada and Calgary, because the hosting service I use is located there. Now, they may actually be hosting it someplace else. I don't know, but I send them a check space from them, and they're located, like I say, they're in Western Canada. I use Rack9. I've been using them since 2001, when free space to AT&T used to give me, they took away from me. And one of my students said this was free but a low price, and that you could get the president of the company to respond to you. That still holds true today. So that's on the internet with a big I. When I go to Mr. Spurlock, for instance, here at the college. That actually just goes across the network too. So it's going between networks, but not going out on the big one. So that's those three terms. The book's not going to ask you in terms of the big I one, but I want you to know it anyway. An ISP, or an internet service provider, is who you go and buy your internet service from. Comcast, Charter, Ringo Telephone, EPB, AT&T. Me, I'm getting it from Comcast up here in Northwest Georgia. I used to service from AT&T, but that's all an internet service provider is they connect the organizations, individuals and organizations, to the big I internet. A digital subscription line is DSL. You don't see that one used as much longer. Most people are now using, in a lot of cases, that you're using cable connections. So they do a little mention about DSL. That was where they switched telephone lines over to being able to carry signals through them. Originally, we were converting digital signals out of our computer with a modem into an analog signal and sending it across, and that was with a dial-up telephone connection. That is done in some places still. Some places here in Northwest Georgia, nothing else is available for them. So they have to still use dial-up. So you do still see it around. A cellular connection says that we're connecting through cellular towers, using the same type of service as our phone. You're going to see a lot more growth with 5G. You can get really good high speeds on that, and that's one of the big pushes on 5G. Take off and grow is up in questions right at the moment, because apparently it may interfere with some airplane flight stuff, and that the airlines are fighting hard to limit the use of 5G anywhere near airports and stuff. And so we'll see what impact they may have soon. But I know about a whole bunch of new 5G stuff. Satellite connection, you can have that one also quite often. That is used in conjunction with a connection, so that you're using part of it one way on the satellite, and you're uploading it on dial-up, and you're downloading it from the satellite. But the satellite could be two-way nowadays also. It's never gotten real big on that, but you do see some of that, and you see some of that in some areas in the somewhat of a rural area also. Suburban, rural, it depends on where you are in this area. The problem with satellite in some cases around here is that there are places that you can't use it because the mountain gets in the way, and you can't get a satellite dish up where you can actually get it to point to the satellite. Dial-up, I already defined to you. That's where you'd actually use telephone line, and that you would dial where you're connecting to. And when you find those, you hear when it's making connection and everything, it makes all kinds of beeping noises of all kinds of sounds. That's what was originally out there. And like I said, it's also used as a backup connection for some big companies in case their main line goes down, that then stuff goes across on dial-up, but slow is better than no connection. So if their good one fails otherwise. That says that your network knows all of the devices on your network. No, I'm wrong. That's where notice same term basically, is where we're sending multiple things across the same cabling. Remember, I mentioned back over at the beginning of this lecture about endpoint devices, and I said I had two of them sitting here in my desk right in front of me. One is my regular phone, which is voice over IP or VoIP. Both of those are plugged into the school's network, and both my same wires as this anything I'm doing on my computer that I send across the network. That's several different types of data that we're using on there. So we're doing both the phone and the computers on there. You may have a camera system, security camera system, running in your same system also, instead of it having separate wiring, which it used to have. That would be part of a converged system too. So that's where you've just combined multiple data types and they're all sharing one type of connection. Doesn't have to be across the wire, it could be wireless. Okay, because a fault tolerant network is a network that has extra devices in it so that if a device fails, there are other devices to replace it and keep the network going. So you've got multiple devices out there. So if one device fails, it rolls over to another, or that you've got the cabling done in such a way that when a wire gets cut or whatever, that it doesn't cut off that path, that machine into the different machines, maybe a longer path, but you're still a path and that you're still operating. And so it's tolerant of faults occurring. A scalable network is when you've built the network and allowed for growth in it. For instance, when you bought your router, your server, not your router, not your server, your switch, that when you got your switch, instead of just getting a switch with just the ports you need in it, that you get one with a number of additional ports, and then as you need to add devices to your network, all you got to do is plug them in. Scalable, it can grow. Quality of service, that's just of how good of a and how fast is it working. Confidentiality is the same always had, and that says, is information that we're sending across staying secret? The biggest way used to keep confidentiality on is encryption, where you encrypt the data and you have the key to be able to decrypt it. And if you don't have the key to decrypt it, you don't get it decrypted. Nobody can read it that's not supposed to. Integrity. Integrity says that our data are intact there. Okay. Now, it doesn't say that our data is correct, but it says that if it's got integrity, you receive what I sent you. Although what I sent you may have not been accurate information, but you've now got identically the same thing I sent you. Availability data is available to people or the devices. Usually you're thinking about it in terms of data. So is that data actually available? Because if you've got it on tape backup, you got to load the tapes, it's got to read the tape, and then it can give you the data. If you've got it on a hard disk, does that hard disk fail and it's no longer available if that hard disk fails? So those are the things in terms of availability. You will see those three terms combined and presented in a triangle as we go on through, and that will be called the CIA triangle. Confidentiality, I for integrity, and A for availability. The question is for you on CIA all along will be, what is the most important and how much importance does each one of those three sides have? And they could vary in length essentially. You can make a network 100% confidential, but lose you've made it so secure the data in it that nobody can get into your network. Basically, you disconnected it from the internet. It ain't doing good if people outside need to be able to get to it. Integrity, how you determine that and how you send along. And what you'll normally do with integrity a lot of times is you create a hash of the data that's being sent. So what it does is it looks at all the data being sent and calculates a special number that represents the data being sent. Now, when it arrives, it looks at it again, that machine, calculates the number again, and sees if it comes up with the same number as when it was sent there. Now, that's more work involved by the computer on both ends. That affects availability, because guess what? You have just slowed it down. You and I want an instant response. We may have to wait a little bit on it. So you've got to balance those three items: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. You're going to see them. You're going to see them as a CIA triangle. That's not the US government CIA. This is CIA in terms of that. Bring your own device, or BYOD, and you'll see some other BYOs also. But this is the there, and that's where people bring their own device instead of using a device supplied by wherever they're going. So, for instance, I'll walk around here with this phone here and use it, as opposed to using the one that's connected to this. Sometimes this phone is mine. This phone is the school's phone. So you can bring in all kinds of different devices. So own laptop some days to work on. I've brought my own device. So bring your own device is just where you bring instead of using the organization's device. That presents some security issues with it. Is where instead of you keeping all the information on your local computer or your local server in your organization, somewhere out there on servers that some organizations giving you access to, usually they rent them to you, but they may not rent them to you. Lots of different places you can store on the cloud. So the cloud is basically that you're storing it somewhere out there in the world. You really actually, when we mentioned my web page a few minutes ago, it's stored on the cloud, but it's a little cloud that's run by that hosting company that I deal with up there in Canada. My pictures that I take all the time, I actually store them on the cloud, but it's a private cloud that's operated by Shutterfly. That is a photo service that's out there on the internet and been there since '98, I think. And I can't remember what the guy that founded it. He made his money in something else in the internet and then founded that to somebody else that's running it. But from the time I started on it, they told me I had free, unlimited. Well, I have taken them seriously on that, of what in the world is free, unlimited space yet. Now, I have bought a number of prints of pictures over the years, but I've probably got stored out there somewhere around 50,000 pictures on their hosting area, there in the cloud. I'm not sure where it's stored at. I know in North Carolina, in South Carolina actually, outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, just over the line, that they have a good sized plant there, and I think it's also a server farm for them. They're based out of California, so I'm guessing they do out there. But they're storing them somewhere and have kept them all these years there. Now, I also have them on my machine. Now, about 22,000 of those pictures were picture slides that my uncle shot in his entire life. And he lived to be almost 98 years old. I've scanned in all of his slides, which is 25,000 plus, and a couple of thousand black and white pictures also. But I'm about 4,000 still got to edit and post out there in some of the black and white ones. But I got them all scanned because I wanted to make sure everybody. Ironically, they all gave me his slide collection. So I have his 25,000 plus slides in my house, besides having them all scanned on my computer. And then power line networking is a new and different one that's sitting out there that you might want to be. And that is, instead of connecting through just regular network wiring on it, that you're across the electrical lines. There's been something that they have kept bringing up to do for years, but I've never seen it really catch on much. The book tells you that it's used for some home network users, but I have really never run into power line networking. The only times I have seen anything on it's when I've been at trade shows and they were pushing it. Is what they see as a trend on it. Definite trend in all of networking is going to wireless and now towards wireless broadband. And this area probably is going to be one of the areas that's going to be one of the faster areas to adopt wireless broadband, because you can go in and set it up over a wide area in the mountains, for instance, where they can't get anything else, and broadcast it to a number of homes that nothing else can economically run there, and that they can run it to different points there and then run it across on that. But it's broadband versus where the regular wireless you think about, where it's just going to individual devices. This is talking about when we connect from your house back to your ISP center. You're using a lot of times fiber or copper band to do that also. So then they talk real briefly about network security threats. We'll be talking about those on through the book. Security solutions, they mention a few here. We'll come back and talk about these more. I actually mentioned one of them earlier, which is where you've got a virtual private network, and that's where you've created a tunnel essentially through the internet, for instance. That's most common, and nobody else can see in it because everything is encrypted in it. And so it essentially works like you're directly connected to the other place, but you're actually connecting through the internet. I would encourage all of you to make sure you have an antivirus program and an anti-spyware program running on your computer. And also firewall. If you're using Windows, you've got a decent firewall built in. The Defender firewall at this point, they keep using that Defender term for different things, is there. That concludes the lecture. Thank you.